Lusaka and Kahwe, 1 contact to a positive case, 1 from routine screening at Ndola Central Hospital, and 3 patients from health facility screening and 1 Tanzanian Lorimed screened in Chilabombwe. Countrymen and women, the trend analysis in general terms over a period of close to 2 months since Zambia recorded its first case of COVID-19 has revealed the following. 1, 167 have tested positive to COVID-19 out of 11,352 tested, representing 1.5% of all those tested. Of the 167 positive cases recorded and quarantined, 109 have since fully recovered, discharged, and have happily rejoined their families. This is a remarkable achievement. On a sad note, though, Zambia has experienced 4 deaths related to COVID-19. However, medical reports of the 3 of these recorded deaths showed they had serious underlying health conditions. Countrymen and women, from this trend analysis, we note that the number of infections recorded after testing in communities has remained generally low. We further note that the health status of those patients who are positive and under treatment for COVID-19 is generally stable. It is equally observed that the number of recoveries has consistently remained high among our people. From this trend analysis, it can be generally said that this pandemic, in the case of Zambia, is relatively different from what other nations are experiencing, where the infection and death rates have been much higher. In saying this, I'm aware that we have been warned that the pandemic is yet to come for Zambia. However, these nations that have been hardest hit by the pandemic and are still struggling, but unlike us, they have begun to open up their socio-economic environment in the context of the new normal living with COVID-19. The new normal means living with COVID-19, just like we have lived with other diseases such as malaria, HIV and AIDS, and tuberculosis, provided we adhere to the prescribed health guidelines, regulations, and certification for COVID-19. Countrymen and women, in embracing the new normal living with COVID-19, let us continue to vigorously fight this disease and not become complacent. The complexity of COVID-19 really calls for our scientists, Zambian scientists, to get to work and answer the many questions surrounding coronavirus. Their findings will help government to make informed decisions. Let us not entirely depend on other countries' findings. Let us not entirely depend on other countries' findings. Countrymen and women, globally, you are all aware that the pandemic has negatively affected all sectors of the world economy, which include aviation, tourism, social security, as well as the labor market. Zambia is indeed no exception, and we believe that the negative socio-economic impact being experienced the world over is what is being felt in Zambia today. At country level, I am fully aware that the pandemic, as well as the measures we have taken as a government in our quest to save lives, have had a negative impact on the socio-economic environment. As a result, we have experienced reduced revenue, thereby impacting negatively on the financing of national programs. If the status quo remains, rest assured that the economy will plunge into the worst crisis our country has ever experienced. However, we must be mindful of the need to steadily progress into living in the new normal for the sake of our health and the health of our economy. This calls for us to review the measures with a view to cautiously and strategically begin to ease so that the various sectors of our economy can start operating within the context of the new normal. Countrymen and women, I have therefore seen it inevitable for restaurants to revert to their normal operations on condition of adhering to the prescribed public health guidelines, regulations, and certification. I wish to direct the reopening of cinemas, gymnasiums, and casinos, again in line with the new normal, while adhering to the prescribed public health guidelines, regulations, and certification. As you are all aware, many businesses such as hotels, lodges, tour operators, internet cafes, as well as event management companies voluntarily closed as a result of the COVID-19 so as to protect themselves, their employees, as well as their clients. I therefore wish to appeal to the proprietors to consider the possibility of getting back to normal operations while observing public health guidelines, regulations, and certification. Please remember, all adjustments that we are making are subject to public health guidelines, regulations, and certification, and practices such as wearing face masks, observing social distancing, hand washing, and sanitizing, and ensuring generally high levels of hygiene. These measures I'm taking today, in addition to those others we have taken in the past, will be for a period of 7 to 14 days and may be reviewed anytime as the pandemic evolves. I think it's appropriate at this point to point out that some of the businesses we haven't affected in these pronouncements we have made today, such as taverns and bars, will be affected and reviewed by the next pronouncement to be made after we see how the measures we've taken out today are being implemented and how the pandemic evolves. Countrymen and women, in my previous address, I announced the creation of a COVID-19 Economic Recovery Fund and directed the Ministry of Finance and other relevant ministries to consolidate resources to be disbursed to small and medium businesses, women groups, the youth, and the most vulnerable that have been the hardest hit. So far, I am aware that the modalities of disbursement of the 10 billion kwacha under the Bank of Zambia have not been quite adequately communicated to the would-be beneficiaries, such as schools, gymnasiums, nightclub owners, cinemas, restaurants, and bars. I am therefore directing the Ministry of Finance to ensure that the modalities are urgently communicated and the collateral demanded from the intended beneficiaries are realistic. Countrymen and women, I am aware that if schools, colleges, and universities remain closed, we shall have an education crisis, as the school calendars would be terribly affected. Already, our children are way behind since the schools were closed, and that is an education crisis in the making. I'm worried about our children who are tired and bored of staying at home all day, especially those in rural parts of the country. And we are seeing instances of juvenile delinquency increasing in some cases. I'm further concerned that if the schools remain closed, there's a likelihood of an increase in the moral decay of our children and the youth as a result of them having more free time at their disposal. An idle mind is the devil's workshop, so goes the old saying. As much as all classes of our learners are important for the education of our children, we must cautiously and strategically manage the reopening of the schools in light of the COVID-19. It is for this reason that in the context of the new normal, I am directing that the first classes be reopened in both primary and secondary school examination classes, and this be on the 1st June 2020, again on condition that schools enforce all public health guidelines, regulations, and certification, as I've said earlier. I further direct the Ministry of Health and the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit to ensure that face masks, of course, reusable face masks, hand-washing soaps, and sanitizers, and hand sanitizers. Yeah, somebody says handsome tiger. And sanitizers, hand sanitizers are prioritized and provided to all school and health centers for distribution and use by our children, starting with those in examination classes. In addition, I direct the ministers of general education and higher education to engage and consult various stakeholders on the possibility and modalities of reopening non-examination classes, colleges, and universities in the very near future. Countrymen and women, I must remind everyone that this battle against COVID-19 is still with us and not yet won. As we fight COVID-19, my government will ensure resilience and balance in our health systems and continue the provision of all health care services to our citizens. I want to assure you that as we fight COVID-19, we'll continue to invest in maternal, child health, nutrition, the fight against HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and other communicable and non-communicable diseases. As head of state, I'll keep observing the situation as it unfolds and provide necessary guidance. Of course, I will listen to those voices out there including those who don't mean well, but I know when you don't mean well. This pandemic, fellow countrymen, provides an opportunity to start our social and economic recovery trajectory towards making it more resilient as we live with the new normal, and strengthen the provisions of essential services for our people. For the most vulnerable communities, I urge the relevant authorities to ensure uninterrupted supplies of essential goods and services through the provision of relief, both food and non-food items. Meanwhile, I wish to reiterate the measures that I have consistently stated to the nation of ensuring social distancing, washing of hands and hand sanitizing, wearing of face masks, and generally maintaining high levels of hygiene. Let us remember to be our brothers and sisters keepers in ensuring we make this new normal easier to live with. Let us avoid unnecessary movements to curb the spread of the disease. I'm looking for my mask. In conclusion, let me start by thanking all frontline workers who are indeed our heroes and heroines in this fight against COVID-19. In this regard, I reiterate my area directive to the Minister of Health to ensure necessary occupational health and safety measures are strengthened to protect our healthcare workers from acquiring COVID-19 and other infections in healthcare settings. Let me thank all cooperating partners and civil society organizations who have generously donated and supported my government in the fight against the deadly coronavirus disease. Let me also thank the private sector, individuals, and the media who have joined us in supporting the people of Zambia in the fight against COVID-19. Let me also take this opportunity to urge provincial ministers to continue providing leadership and oversight in coordinating multi-sectoral stakeholders in their respective jurisdictions and ensure enforcement of the COVID-19 public health measures as stipulated in Statutory Instruments number 21 and 22 of 2020, as well as the additional directives I announced during my last national address. I further direct the Ministry of Health to work closely with the Ministries of Commerce, Trade and Industry, Transport and Communication, Local Government, and Home Affairs to ensure adherence to the already provided for interventions to prevent transmission of COVID-19 while allowing economic activity and movement of essential goods and services, as well as continuation of trade and industry in the Republic. Our present situation also presents an opportunity for more citizens to become self-reliant and venture into non-traditional but lucrative sectors of our economy, such as agriculture, aquaculture, forestry, and ICT industries, among others. These are unusual times, and they call for collective, innovative, and unprecedented approaches. My government will therefore ensure that we strike a delicate strategic balance between the health of our citizens and promoting economic activity. Together, we can defeat COVID-19 and return to normalcy. But how long this will take, God knows. I wish to emphasize that the new normal is here. And the new normal means living with COVID-19 while observing public health guidelines and regulations. And the new normal means social distancing, always wearing face masks in public places, washing of hands regularly, and sanitizing. Above all, let us continue to seek the face of God, particularly during this time of COVID-19. Above all, let us continue to seek the face of God, particularly during this time of COVID-19. May the Almighty God bless you all. May God bless Zambia. I thank you.
That was His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, addressing the nation. The expectations have been either met or not, but at the end of the day, one thing is certainly clear. There has been some change, some approach that has met the expectations of some, the easing of pressure.